Well, hello again. Welcome again to another podcast on Down to Earth but Heavenly Minded. And I'm your host, Rish. And again, we're going to be going through the text uh, book for life, the Bible. So we're going to be looking at the text of the Bible. And last time we got together, we went through all these names, all the genealogies of Noah and his sons, and their clans and their nations that came from them. And it said something in the last chapter that I just want to make mention of. It said that these nations and their languages, but that chapter actually was looking ahead to this chapter. And in reality, there was no chapters in the original writings. There was no chapters and verses. They were put in there for our convenience so we can move around and find things in the scriptures. But before that, they were just a scroll, and uh, there were probably many scrolls to a book because some of the books were quite long, like Genesis is, and since we put the chapters in, it's 50 chapters, and some of the chapters have quite a few verses, so the book is quite long. Uh, but why it mentioned languages was to tell us what was going to happen. See, God was looking at the future, and we can't see the future unless God tells us what it is. So in this chapter, we're going to be looking at the fact that all these descendants that came from Noah and his sons were all speaking one language. And God had to change that, and He had a reason for changing it. And that's what we're going to see when we get into this chapter. So, with that said, we're going to be in chapter 11 today, and we're going to be looking at the Tower of Babel. So, with that said, let's just go through the text. Now, the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east and found the plains in the land of Shinar and settled there, and they said to one another, now, this is mankind conniving against God already, and this is just a short time after the flood. Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had bricks and stones and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the earth. Now remember, God said, multiply, and spread out. He wanted us to do this. But mankind has an idea for himself. He's going to do it his way. This is really kind of religion when you think about it. This is what religions do. They get together, set their own rules, and how they're going to reach God. And God has a way of reaching him, but it's not the way man would think so. Now here we have man gonna kind of reach up to God. They didn't want to be dispersed on the earth, but also, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built. They were trying to reach heaven their own way, build their way, their own works. And the Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. In other words, they're going to get together, they're going to do a lot of other stuff. And nothing that they purpose to do will now be impossible for them. So God knew what their plans were. He knew their hearts. Come, let us go down. Again, we have the plurality mentioned here. Come, let us go down, and there confuse their languages, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So where did all these languages today come from? Here's where they came from. This was the start. God caused this to happen because man would get together and try to reach God his own way. God didn't want it. That's not the way God wants us to reach him. He tells us in his word how to do it. That's why it's important that we read the Bible and try to understand it. Now, they couldn't understand their speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of the earth, and they left off building the city. So they just quit. Therefore, the name was called Babel, or Babel. Maybe that's where we get our word. Oh, just babbling like I'm doing right now. Because there the Lord confused their language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. Now we come to Sham's descendants. And again, there's some names here I can't pronounce probably. But Sham's descendants these are the generations of Sham. When Shem was 100 years old, his father, Apeshad, I can't pronounce it, 2 years after the flood, and Shem lived, and he fathered Apachia 500 years, and other sons and daughters. You know what I'm going to do is, we read just a little bit of this chapter, but let me just pause for a minute here. And I'm going to have this chapter read to us, and the names will be pronounced right. So let me just pause for a second here, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with you, and I now have this ready to read here. So let's just go through this chapter.
Chapter 11. Now the whole earth had one language and the same words. And as people migrated from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and bitumen for mortar. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of man had built. And the Lord said, Behold, they are one people, and they have all one language, and this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city. Therefore its name was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of all the earth. These are the generations of Shem. When Shem was 100 years old, he fathered Arpachshad 2 years after the flood. And Shem lived after he fathered Arpachshad 500 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Arpachshad had lived 35 years, he fathered Shelah. And Arpachshad lived after he fathered Shelah 403 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Shelah had lived 30 years, he fathered Eber. And Shelah lived after he fathered Eber 403 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Eber had lived 34 years, he fathered Peleg. And Eber lived after he fathered Peleg 430 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Peleg had lived 30 years, he fathered Reu. And Peleg lived after he fathered Reu 209 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Reu had lived 32 years, he fathered Serug. And Reu lived after he fathered Serug 207 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Serug had lived 30 years, he fathered Nahor. And Serug lived after he fathered Nahor 200 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Nahor had lived 29 years, he fathered Terah. And Nahor lived after he fathered Terah 119 years, and had other sons and daughters. When Terah had lived 70 years, he fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife. And they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans, to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Okay, I stopped the reading here. I just want to remember, as we got to the end of this genealogy, we come to Abraham, or Abram at this time, and his wife Sarai, not Sarah, but their names were changed later on, and they will play an important role in the Bible, because these were ancestors that are mentioned quite a bit in the Bible, all the way through, all the way into the New Testament. There is mention of Abraham, and Abraham was a very important person, even though he starts out, he's Abram in this portion of the Bible, but later on he's renamed Abraham, and he's the father of a lot of people, father of all the nations. There's a lot of nations, all the nations are blessed because of this man, and we will see that. And he is also very important in the Muslim religion, very important in the Christian religion, very important in the Jewish religion. So this is a very important man. And this is where he's first mentioned. And his father, Haran, was the father of Micah, and so forth, as we see the genealogy and the forming of these nations. And it is important to know that he is the father of Jews. This was a very, very important man. So as we looked at this chapter, this is kind of a springboard for where we're going from here, because it's boiling down. We're going to be looking at one nation in particular, and that's the Jewish nation, the Hebrews. But also all these other nations are being mentioned in the Bible. And we will see, like the Philistines were mentioned once. And then we also will see the Moabites and the Perizzites and, all these other nations as we go through. But this is important to remember this chapter, because this is where Father Abraham comes from. This is his genealogy. And not only that, is from this line our Lord Jesus Christ came. He was a descendant of Abraham. He was a descendant of Adam. And we can trace him all the way back. And it was through his mother, Mary, and also through Joseph, even though Joseph wasn't his biological father. And we will see that in the New Testament. But try to get a handle on this as we move forward. So with that said, I'm going to end our session for today. So bye. We'll see you tomorrow.